Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 13th meeting of the North Kingstown School Department Building Subcommittee. We're passing around the attendance sheet, so if you could just sign that to confirm who is here for the minutes and also to confirm that we do indeed have a quorum. The first item on the agenda would be public comment. So if anyone here within the public would like to say a few words, the podium is open. Seeing none, we'll go right to the next item. Approval of the meeting minutes of our April 18th, 2024 meeting. Hopefully everyone had the opportunity to take a look at those. There's a motion in order to accept those.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. The next one is just a brief item on the update on the bond legislation. So as most of us I'm sure know, but just for the record, the town council approved the moving the bond language forward for a November ballot question. It's in the hands of the General Assembly. I had the opportunity to talk to our delegation for the last 10 days or so and had a very lengthy discussion with the Speaker of the House on Friday. Passage of the bond is looking very, very good. We don't expect any bumps. However, regretfully, receiving the bonuses does not look so good. They're pretty much saying no to everyone. Providence attempted to get the bonus language in the legislation and they carved it out. And so they're pretty much adamant that it's not going to happen. I did have some discussions with two representatives today and just talk about how we're different than everyone else because we have a 35% reimbursement. So we are attempting to talk to the Speaker, but again, the Speaker has his reasons why, because once he opens the floodgates, others can come forward. So I do respect his position on that, but on behalf of North Kingstown, I'm still gonna try. And so with that, we're moving forward. We're excited about getting the bond question on the ballot for November. Once it's passed, we'll be talking about getting information out to the public as far as fiscal impact, tax impact. I'll have the financial advisors do a thorough job on that. I'm sure we'll talk about having some public hearings and make sure that the public is knowledgeable and well informed as to exactly what they're voting on. The question that the council put together was one question and for the entire project. And I think that benefits the project itself. It gives us some flexibility. As we know, there was a discussion as to whether there should be two questions, and I'm glad the council decided to have one. While there definitely is merit in having two, one of the downsides to having two is that if you had $70 million for middle school and $70 million, I just threw these numbers out, $70 million for improvements, if the bid came in at $72 million, the project would be dead. And so just that flexibility is important, but in the end, the council will have the authority to decide whether to go forward. So if the middle school came in at 100 million, and hopefully that's not the case, the council can say, let's step back and just focus on capital. So having one question was instrumental in moving this forward. That's a Reader's Digest version as to where we are. I don't think I told you anything you already didn't know. But we're excited about getting this forward and hopefully get the public well informed and have a good decision come November. Anything I missed?
No.
Perfect.
Thank you.
The next item is review and approval of proposal for Stage 2 design, engineering, and consultation services for RIDE Stage 2 submission. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you very much. Everyone has a copy of the proposal that we received from Perkins Eastman. As you know, what the project is that we have discussed moving forward is a new build of Wakeford Middle School, as well as capital improvement projects throughout the district. Perkins Eastman will be providing the architectural design and oversight of the build of Wakeford Middle School. So they have given us a proposal for that work. We are still waiting on a proposal from Rouse for the capital improvement. They've been going back and forth looking at that. We just don't have that for tonight's meeting. But as soon as we do, we'll bring it to the committee for review, and that will be for the remainder of the capital improvement projects that we do have across the district. So I just want to put that out in case there's any questions why we only have this one proposal tonight. So we do have that in front of you. We meaning administration, and Mr. Waterman, myself, Inga, have been going back and forth working with Joe Costa from Perkins Eastman to get this proposal, and so we sent you what is the final proposal earlier today for you to review. But Joe is here tonight, so he is going to go through that, so that way everyone has the same understanding as we do, and then if there are any questions, we can ask those questions.
Thank you, Dr. Brad. Good evening, everybody. It's good to be back here again. Looking forward to working on these two projects and hopefully getting them through the referendum this year and getting something constructed. For the record, I'm Joe Costa. I'm a principal and architect with Perkins Eastman. You actually have two proposals in front of you tonight. One is
We only have only the Whitford Middle.
Oh, sorry. You have Wickford Middle School, which is a replacement project. That's the intent. And so the services in front of you are really broken up into two components. The phase one is the stage two submission to RIDE. And in order to do that, there's a number of checklist items that we have to complete, including writing an educational program, developing architectural floor plans, elevations, sections, some details on how the building is actually coming together. We're also required to do preliminary framing plans and preliminary mechanical and to some degree some electrical design work. So it's sort of the first steps in an overall building design, but it's quite detailed. It's a lot more detailed than perhaps a conceptual design because RIDE wants to really understand what the department is proposing, and so they can have a lot of information in front of them as they're making a review and a decision about the application. So that's really the first step of it. And again, as I said, it's architectural, it's mechanical, it's electrical, some finishes, there's a lot of information that has to be produced in order to ensure that we get RIDE approval. All of that work has to be submitted to RIDE by September 15th of this year. However, there is a number of steps within the town that have to occur before that can be submitted to RIDE. And we'll be working through that with Dr. Duga's office, making sure that we get that well in advance of the 15th, so different departments and different folks in the town can review it, ask questions, and ultimately, vote on it. So that's part one. After the referendum, we'll be doing part two, which is stage 3 and 4, which is the design, the full design and engineering, and then through construction phase services. But the phase 2 is really contingent upon a referendum approval. And that's not necessarily in this proposal, it just mentions it as a subsequent phase to the services. So the proposal itself is pretty well detailed as far as what we're going to be doing. There's a concentration on the RIDE checklist that's necessary to complete, and it's quite a detailed list. It's not in this particular package, but if you go online, you can see all of the components and pieces. But we'll also be addressing any kind of RIDE comments that come up or come through the discussion. We'll be meeting with RIDE representatives to make sure that when the project arrives on the RIDE desk, we have a speedy and favorable review. What we don't want to do is have any surprises after September 15th. We want to make sure that once it gets to RIDE, they do a very quick review, they get the comments back to us, and we're set for the next step. We don't want to restart anything. We'll be doing a facilities assessment report. That's part of the submission so that they understand why we're replacing Wickford, and some of the details and some of the components associated with that building is going to be included in the report. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing a detailed education space program. We've already started some of that work in creating a space list, but it's going to be a lot more detailed with information about how the spaces are going to be used, how they're going to be equipped, what the capacity of each of the spaces will be. Those are the kinds of bits of information that will be within the report. We'll also be folding in the 5-year district-wide capital improvement plan. That'll become part of that submission. And let's see, very important, we'll be producing detailed project costs and estimates so that everyone understands what the project is likely to cost at bid, and also what it's going to cost at completion. So we will be predicting those costs over several years and keeping a very keen eye on the marketplace. And as you know, there's a lot of projects out there in Rhode Island right now, and we want to make sure that we're predicting the costs very accurately. So that's going to be another part of it. We'll also be participating in the CM procurement process. That'll really be led by Inga and the Jacobs team, but we'll be assisting in that as well. And we'll also be attending informational sessions as required, not just locally, but also with RIDE and even outside of this room as necessary. So make sure that everybody understands what the project is, what the design entails, and be available to answer any question that anybody has. And it's all that has to be done pretty quickly. And that's basically our proposal, really, in a nutshell. Any questions?
So I have a few, I just have a few questions.
Mhm.
Your role in the public meetings,
Yep,
will that be covered under the original?
it is.
So you'll participate in the public meetings that we have?
It will.
Okay.
And you'll guide us on, what you want us to focus on at those particular meetings. If it's more design or more finance or more technical, whatever it is, we'll be
But it's
prepared.
included in the quote?
Correct.
Great. Rendering is included in the quote?
Yes, it is.
Great. Your professional experience, or your professional opinion, is you had put a new school at approximately 76,000 to 79,500 square feet, serving approximately 400 students. Do you know where that fits in RIDE's reimbursement, I don't even know what you wanna call it, but they have the
Standards.
guidelines.
Yes,
Thank you, standards.
yes, the
Thank you.
square footage standards,
Yes.
yes. The square footage standards are on the low end of that particular spread, so our goal will be to get the building size as close to 76 as we possibly can.
That's why there's that range there, because
Yep.
we've really been working with them on the size, because we wanna make sure that what we build, we can be reimbursed for.
Great.
Yeah, and you can
All right.
talk in
Right,
great
so-
detail on that.
If you go by kind of like just the standard regulation on the, just, what is it, the 190 square feet per student or something, that's 76,000. But then, once you have the actual program in place, we go sit down with RIDE and, there are some things that can increase the square footage, yet they'll still participate. So the idea is to maximize that square footage and fit the program without exclusions. So, but this is a little bit of a conversation that has to be had with them, like say, special education programs, like sometimes they'll allow more square footage for that. Sometimes they'll allow, maybe like a bigger gym for some reason, maybe yes, maybe no, maybe there's other things that are involved, like, we'll need to go in and present North Kingstown's program, and you need to substantiate why North Kingstown would like to, say, deviate from certain requirements if they do. So this is why we have a low end, and then the higher end is where the desired space summary with educational
So
program.
your goal obviously is to work with the community in trying to get a project that is fully reimbursable.
Correct.
Great, excellent. I think that's important for the public to know as well, that's why I brought that up. And then finally, although this is a question more for the school department, and if this isn't the place, that's fine, do we have a funding source for this 398?
So that is something that we are looking at as far as what we have in our capital reserve, any surplus that we'll have at the end of the year, as well as the withholding from the town of the 300.
Excellent.
Yeah, and then just like last time, like working collaboratively with the town council,
Right.
like as, depending on where it lands and what we might need.
Great, okay, yeah, cause I know that coupled with see what state aid's gonna, with that money's put aside for, that'd be great, so, good, just curious.
I have a question, but you have one, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have one. So, one question, Joe, I have is just maybe you can just explain how the folding in of the 5-year district-wide capital improvement plan would work with this, the design work that you have to do for the middle school.
Yeah, I'll start and then you can jump in. My understanding that there was a 5-year capital improvement plan done prior to the project. So what we'll do is we'll bring that into as part of the overall presentation, and if it needs to be updated, we'll update as best we can. We'll probably need participation from Rouse if he's gonna be doing the CIP projects.
Okay.
We'll want him to participate because he'll know the other buildings a lot more than we will.
And this is, you're referencing the stage 2 application, like that part of it, like
Yes.
that piece of it, that's the collaboration?
Yes, exactly.
It is part of the sort of RIDE requirement for stage 2. So you have to have a 5-year plan, you have to
Yeah.
have that plan work, the proposed plan has to work with that plan, and if there's any edits, modifications, those have to be explained and substantiated and justified, so this is all part of that process,
Yeah.
I think, why.
Mike, just remind me what the age of the 5-year plan is. How old is that plan?
It's
Less than a
in,
year.
yeah, it's still in development.
Oh, it's still in development?
Yes,
Okay.
yep. As far as, so the, I'm sorry, the assessment was completed.
Yeah.
The plan was approved in December of '23, but what we've done is we've taken that plan and then created kind of a specific plan for the bond-specific projects.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
'cause
when
it
I
was
say in
different-
development,
yeah.
that's what I mean, we've taken the original
Yeah.
plan and kind of chunked it out with the projects that are gonna be included.
But last year, the new 5-year plan was approved by the school committee.
Excellent.
And so, to Mike's point, we've been adjusting it because, doing renovations, like there was obviously renovations on that original plan for Wicker Middle School, if we're not going, that's where it's been changing a bit, but there is an approved plan that's, less than a year old, I think.
Yeah, and we're still working off of a previous stage 2 submission. We've received extensions on that to carry us through this one. So the one that was approved in December hasn't actually been submitted as part of a stage 2 yet. This will be its first time. I did have a question on the last page. So we've got the fee for the overall work. And then, I know we talked about this, so I just want to make sure there's clarity. Then there's the 4
Yeah.
studies. Was the intent to see was the intent in those 4 studies to wait till after referendum before conducting them, if RIDE would go for that?
We're trying not to do them as part of stage 2,
Okay,
right? So what our intent is to use as much site information that we have available, and only do those if we're required through our conversations with RIDE. That's the intent of those 4 items.
so if I can speak freely from sitting here over the past year plus, you've been here with me, I might suggest, as one person's recommendation, that we do the geotechnical and the property survey now. I know the property survey was what allowed us to find the issues at Quinnesset with the wetlands. And I know just from doing the test sites and the borings and the soil samples, there are still people who have concerns over that front yard at Whitford Middle School. And I wonder if the geotechnical might just be another way to give people reassurances that there aren't issues at that site. I'm not one for spending money unnecessarily. I love the idea of trying to see what we can push off, but I wouldn't want people to not feel confident casting a vote, whether it's for or against a project, because there's unknowns or I wonders about the site. So that's just my opinion.
Okay.
I guess I would second that in terms of geotechnical. Being a structural engineer, I know that the foundation certainly could be impacted. I know that's what with the Davisville site, the foundations ended up having to be more robust than probably would to assume without the geotechnical investigation, so.
I may add, just based on what's happening now in my experience, RIDE will require the life cycle cost analysis and an energy model. I don't
For
think-
stage 2, for September.
Stage 2. But it doesn't have to come in September no, we're talking about timing of it, so because we have a very tight timeline right now, it certainly could follow, because there is a period of time before they approve, right? So they fully approved the submission in December, so there is some months when they come back with follow-up questions, and those could potentially follow
Catch up
after November.
after.
We can talk to
Yeah.
them about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Catch
there's
up after.
Right.
multiple priorities and multiple things happening at once, so obviously there's the RIDE piece and making sure that piece exists, and then of course there's the community transparency piece, and then there's also the financial piece, and those are not all friends, and so I think that's the challenge of what Mike's talking about, is figuring out what can we do that's fiscally responsible, but also gets people the information they need to make an educated decision, and also it complies with what RIDE requires as part of this process. And so I think that's the thing that Ken, you all really need to figure out and we need to try to balance is those pieces, because they're all
Would you-
important.
Would you mind just clarifying, I mean, I think everyone knows the geotechnical because we talked about it at the DMS site, the survey, I think, I know I'm comfortable with that, I don't know if anybody else wants that further explained, but I would like a little more explanation on what life cycle cost analysis and energy model. I think we
It's an
started doing some of
engineering-
that, but,
It's an engineering term, and basically the engineer, the MEP engineer, and jump in, because I think you know more about life cycle cost analysis than I do, but the MEP engineer would come up with a report on the mechanical systems that are used, and on like the energy usage of the targets of the building that they're proposing, and basically, an analysis of that, and then that goes with the energy model, showing, energy efficiency of the building, which in a net zero case,
Yeah.
it's proving that it's an net zero,
Right, it's,
net zero.
it's a good point. So we're designing the building and the envelope and the systems for net zero, right? So that's going to be sort of the baseline.
I thought this didn't include net zero, just going back to our meeting last time.
Oh.
No, so at the school
Oh.
committee meeting, it was recommended to put the net zero in, and so we changed the recommendation
Okay.
for
Right.
bond, and
Thank you
that's
for
what
the
was approved by the town council,
Right.
to include net zero within the new build.
Right. So the point is that we're gonna have no trouble meeting the energy model, right? And we're gonna have no trouble meeting the life cycle cost analysis to make sure that the system that's selected is the best system over a long life of the building. So I'm not really concerned about it, but it's a matter of actually doing the study and spending the engineering time to prove what we know is going to work. So, our strategy is sort of to hold off as long as possible to do
and
that.
correct me if I'm wrong, those are the conversations we were starting to have late last October, November, when we were meeting with the energy team.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
I've tried to get it waived in the past couple of submissions, and I couldn't on stage two, but if
Well-
timing is needed, then we can submit it later.
When you say later, you mean
Well, I mean, for
between the
example-
bond referendum
Right.
and the
December.
December approval?
Right.
So if it fails,
We'll be
if
we'll-
there's any issues, we don't do it, but to approve the
We understand the
submission.
process here.
You
Okay,
have
we
to.
understand.
We'll be cited on it, and then we'll have to catch up on
Yeah.
a submission
Can you
piece.
clarify for me why a life cycle cost analysis on a brand new facility would cost $30,000?
That was the number I got from the consultant team, and so what they do is they study a number of different systems,
Uh-huh.
and they run their calculations, and that's what they need to input that data into that particular program that they use. I don't know what hours they spend on it, but I have asked a couple of different MEP consultants, and that seems to be the going rate. And I don't know if it's 4 systems or 3 systems, I don't know.
And that's a requirement from RIDE that we do have the
Yeah.
3 system analysis, like, that's a piece of it?
Yeah, yeah. And they're not making it any easier on us.
No, I understand the due diligence, it's tricky when you're looking at a town's
Yeah.
financial situation and not having been successful with the previous bond, having to think about how to finance a project like this again. Especially for a new build, that just seems like a high cost in my opinion.
And that is why we asked to carry it as a separate line item, so it could be done maybe after November 5th.
Who would make that determination and how would that request get made?
So the goal is to sit down with RIDE and talk to them about it and just say, can we wait for these 2 items, say, well, now, I don't know, maybe 2 or 4 items, depending on what the decision is, to do that after the referendum, depending on the outcome, so at least those monies are not spent as part of the base. And hopefully receive a pre-approval on that. I wouldn't pretend, go at longer than that, I would do it right away, so this way everyone knows that this is acceptable or not acceptable.
In the funds that we're putting up now, if the referendum's successful, these are reimbursable expenses?
They can be put with the soft costs, so those are gonna be built into the soft cost expenditure. But since PAYGO is no longer available, you're not going to get those funds right away like you used to.
You'd have to
You'll
get
have to
them-
wait until the project is
Yeah.
complete.
Well, just to clarify that, or to elaborate on it, so my understanding is that all of these costs are already in the rough cost estimate. So any expenditures would be reimbursed by the bond, and would also receive 35% reimbursement from the state.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep, it's all eligible costs.
I'm not done to see it, it says here that the classes in the school will not be touched, you know, everything will continue.
Well, yeah, I should have mentioned that. The plan is to actually construct a new school and keeping the existing school safe and operational during every phase of the construction.
And that's possible
Right.
doing that, with the school being built that close?
It is. We've done that, but that part of the design will be a phasing plan, so everyone understands what the fence line is, what's going to be usable, what's not going to be usable. And then there'll be a plan to move the children into a brand-new building, fully equipped, and then the old building gets demolished, and whatever site we displace, whether it's ball fields or parking or drives, that gets constructed as the last phase. That's the sort of process. Now, we've done that before on much tighter sites,
Yeah,
so.
I know we did it at the high school, but we had, the high school was built on a football field, that was already,
Yeah, well,
What's an- what's a
Athletic
district
complex, right.
example of one that you did like that?
that would be, Charter Oak would be one. We've done a couple up in Massachusetts as well. I can get you the list, all right? And I'll share that too. It is a challenge, and it's gotta be built
I'm
in.
thinking like bus,
Yeah,
you know, even like talking to one of the bus drivers that said,
correct.
coming in behind the school, like on the regular road, they're gonna have to eventually have a bus coming in,
Yep.
some part down Post Road, come in front of the school, more or
Right.
less.
So what happens is
Things like that.
there might be some temporary improvements, site improvements, like there may be a parking lot, or there may be a drop-off, or a zone or something like that, that stays that way until the construction is done, and then it gets demolished, and then it gets replaced. So there is a number of phases, a little bit more complicated than having a site somewhere else, but that's something that we'll
Yeah,
do.
you don't wanna see, having to put kids all
Yeah.
over the place and,
Yeah.
you know.
And so, Joe, just so you know, in Jack's questions about, the site layout and the phases and all, we did share, the designs that we have right now at our district safety committee meeting last week.
Oh, good.
Just to get feedback from police and fire. So there are some suggestions with them regarding the layout, and they will be involved in that process as we move forward in regards to the phases that we have and what is placed where within the site for access for, general, traffic in and out, but also for emergency access, so.
So,
And they're also coming up with solutions, right? Like, one of the things they asked for, they already had a solution that they've seen in
They had
other
ideas
places.
ready to share.
Yeah,
So we're talking site plan stuff,
Yes.
Mike?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, we'd love to hear that.
Parking lots, the driveways.
Yep.
Yeah.
so part of the stage 2 application, RIDE reviews the phasing plan and also wants to make sure that those conversations have happened and were pre-approved with local AHJs, like authority having jurisdiction entities like the fire, the police, and then the plan is in place and the plan is solid. It's not uncommon to have a school built right next to an existing school. I worked on 2 or 3 of those. Lunenburg Middle High School, Eden Park, actually, we built a gym right connected to an existing building during school year. So it's all possible with the right construction manager and the right safety practices in place. It's not an issue.
They did it at the road at Cole, and they ended up taking the gym down, and for a couple of years, they bused the students to the high school for a PE class.
Yeah, I was thinking, both from a design standpoint, looking at the other districts, but then also thinking about, when it gets to the point, like, the administration being able to talk to schools that have had similar models to get suggestions of what works, what didn't, and things to think about to make sure that we have the least disruptive, situation for students, so that's where that was coming from for me. I did have one timeline question. I know that the document, obviously has the September 15th, deadline, but I was curious about, the other deliverables, and as you were saying, it needs to kind of go through a lot of different layers of both this committee, the school committee, making sure administrators, et cetera, are keyed in, the community, of course, and so can you give me a sense of that piece of the timeline as far as this proposal?
The intent is to develop that timeline as we develop the stage 2. So conversations about the site and phasing and all of that will influence the overall timeline of the project, and we're going to do that as we're doing stage two.
Yeah.
I think Erin needs
The
the
timeline between now
from
and
now
and
until
submitting
September
stage two.
15th.
Like by July one, we're
Oh,
gonna have a,
Oh,
Yeah, like what I was mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, like, so
I'm
this
sorry.
has, we have to submit
sorry.
to, yeah.
It's okay,
so-
they're
I
being
was
good.
thinking actually building the.
Yeah, no, as much as I would like to be that.
Yeah,
No, I was thinking as far as when the school committee and the like I'm thinking we don't have, there's two thought processes for me. One is like meetings in the summer and what might be needed, and then also making sure that we're getting the information well in advance so that we can work it through and also make sure that we can get it to the community and the public. Because September 15th is fairly close to when the election would be, and so that's where I was curious about that timeline.
So, I think part of this process is, now that we know this is a go, we'll develop a schedule, which it's actually almost identical to last year's because we already had it once. And
Yes.
it's the timeline of deliverables is gonna be very similar. So I'm actually working on that, and then Perkins Eastman will have to buy into that, and we'll all have to, probably at the next meeting, we'll be ready to share a timeline where approvals by this committee and by the school committee and the town council, whatever approvals we need to hit that September 15th milestone.
Working backward from the deadline.
yeah,
Right.
Rob, isn't there like a 60-day before election that town council has to I remember there was something last summer, there was a certain number of days before the referendum.
Where they have to, I'm sorry.
They had to like approve the question, or does anybody remember that? We had to go back in the summer, cause there was still
I
some
know
question.
The question, I'm sure, the question has to get to the Secretary of State, within so many days, and that may be the timeline you're referring to. But it's pretty much gonna mirror what's in the bond, so the answer is, that'll probably be their August meeting,
Okay.
that's my guess. But I'll double check on that.
And then for us, Chairman Joe, the stage two submission has to come to building committee for review, has to go to school committee prior to the September 15th. So we'll just make sure that we have, meetings, even we just have tentative meetings of the building committee throughout the summer for us to meet as information's coming in. But the review has to be here and then before our September school committee meeting, because then it gets sent over to RIDE by the 15th.
It actually has to be reviewed by, approved by school committee and town council.
Yeah,
Town
that's what
council.
Mike's talking about.
Okay.
I think that's when we had that crunch. We had a couple less.
Yeah, but is there a date deadline with town council regarding the
There was so-
bond? I thought it would
there
just
was
have to
so
be
many
prior
No,
to.
days-
that's all two different.
It was so many days before,
That 60-day thing wasn't it, but it
Okay.
was getting it to them.
yeah, there was so many days before they had to authorize a question, and maybe that was
I'll find
authorized
out.
to
Yeah.
the.
I'll double
We just have to make sure all of our
Yeah, exactly.
meeting dates are.
Yeah.
Because the council can have a special meeting, but they only have one meeting in July and one meeting in August, so that's an important question.
Yeah, that's where I'm just thinking we wanna get our timelines aligned and make sure, I prefer not asking folks to have special meetings if we can coordinate it and wanting to make sure that, Perkins Eastman, if this is approved, is aware of those deadlines.
And
the
that's the order it
level
would
of-
have to go building committee, school committee, then town council.
It doesn't matter which way or how
Doesn't
you
matter.
go.
Well,
the-
it would
the-
matter for here in the
for-
town.
it's
of
per
who
district.
it's going to.
RIDE doesn't care. All I need is a meeting date and a note saying it was approved, that they have seen the submission. The level of the draft that those entities want to see is up to you, so it's based on the decision made here. And the flow of meetings is also up to you, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that for the stage two, you have to pretty much provide detailed drawings of the project, just not basic schematics, correct?
It's one step below design development, right? So we'll have to provide some typical wall sections, right? Not all of them, but a handful so that people can see how the building is built. They can check the U value, they can, that kind of thing. And that'll be, for the windows and the roof, some typical, different wall sections like the gym and the classroom, things like that.
Can you plus or minus estimate what percentage of the full construction document that is?
Sure.
10, 20, 30%?
No, it's like 15%. So it's still at the very beginning, but it's pretty detailed. You'll know what the structural system is, you'll know what the grid is, you know what the thickness of walls are, and you'll know what every single room in the building will be, and square footage for that building.
So RIDE requires a schematic design set. Also outlines specifications manual.
Oh,
Need to
yeah,
require
that's right,
that.
we're doing a full spec manual as well, I
Right.
forgot about that one.
Outline, not full detail, but
Yeah.
the beginning.
Well, more than
yes.
the index.
Yes, absolutely. More than that, I
Yeah.
agree. They also require a furniture plan if the district wants to get reimbursed for furniture and technology. They require engineering drawings, MEP, so mechanical, electrical, plumbing, line diagrams. It's quite a bit of information that has to be put together for the set that will basically go into what's called stage 3, which is the next stage, and then have to get more developed and resubmitted again as schematic design. So there's almost 2 schematic design sets. One is a little bit maybe a lighter version, a preliminary, and then the final one kind of brushed on all the details. And it also requires a fully developed estimate that goes with those drawings, plus a schedule and a phasing plan.
Don't forget the site plan.
And the site plan, of course, I forgot, I always forget the site plan.
I'm just trying to kind of
Yeah.
think if it is, let's say 20% means $400,000. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
picture what the overall project will end up costing on your end, or what your soft cost will be. That's all.
Okay. So that's it, really. Any other questions?
Because we're working with an older facility, the existing facility, is there any steps or things that you all would be doing as far as like looking into, like I know it's not a historic, like
Yep.
registered site, correct, Ralph?
It
I
is.
believe, yeah, so like is there anything
Correct.
else that we need to do with
Yeah,
that
you
piece of
wanna
it?
talk about that?
Sure. So I did talk to to Elizabeth Totten a little bit about it from the Historic Commission. I know there have been conversations previously with them. It is it is a building that's registered in the registry. It will need to get reviewed by the commission, and a level of what's called mitigation in return to demolish it will have to be determined. So they typically want, so the team will have to go in, explain why it is being demolished, why it cannot be renovated. It has to be substantiated, and then there's a discussion to have with them in terms of what they would like kind of in return for its demolition. And that goes with case by case basis. So sometimes we have to do something like document the existing building before it's demolished, do a full analysis by a historian and submit it. Sometimes it is doing a full analysis of the neighborhood that the building is in. We have done that. Sometimes it's just putting some informational sort of displays. I don't know what it is. I just know that she said that there has to be some discussion, and this is the discussion that needs to start.
My understanding is that, and I could be wrong, my understanding is that what our research showed that it was a structure that was a contributing factor and not necessarily on the registry. Is that incorrect? And if you know, if
Yeah, we
the-
don't need to do,
Okay,
I was just
yeah. That
wanted
was
to make
my
sure
I
that
have
it
an
was
email
part
from
of
her
this.
that I think
Okay.
she said something about the registry,
Wow.
but again, this
Okay.
email was extremely
I
informal.
thought it was,
I just wanted to get like an understanding and kind of
Okay.
high level idea until we start really developing that. But this is one of the conversations that we have to have with her and the team in place and the
Can you say the name
representative.
again for me, Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Totten
Okay.
with 2 T's.
And they work where?
It is the Rhode Island Historic Preservation
Heritage
Commission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Right.
when does that, like, where in the process is that? Before stage 2 submission, after stage 2, before bond, after bond?
So during stage 2, RIDE wants to know that conversation has happened and that there is some form of mutual understanding of what's going to happen. So they want to know that there is a plan in place It doesn't necessarily have to be executed, or, you know, conversations can continue, but as long as there is a buy-in from both parties that those conversations will lead to an approval eventually, that's what they want. So typically it's like, they would want just an email communication, meeting minutes, any kind of memos that followed. Typically, once it's all figured out, there is like a memorandum of understanding between them and the district about the next steps, what type of action will be taken. But that doesn't have to be concluded, it just has to be in the works.
And that's covered as part of this
That
proposal,
part,
or is
that
that
part
separate?
is, Aaron,
Yeah.
but we don't know if we're doing, you
The
know,
resolution.
whatever that is. We
Yeah.
don't know what that is yet.
The resolution typically has to be, whatever studies there are have to be done by a historian, so it's typically an added cost and something that has to be done by like a professional entity that does those things, so it's something separate, like an addition.
I think just, I think what's important to me is, one, I have mixed feelings about the building because it is old and I do really appreciate history and whatnot. But also, making sure that we're doing the right thing and also understanding the costs associated with that. And so I do think we need to, whoever's responsible for those conversations, you know, starting them sooner than later, so that the school committee has a full understanding of these costs, plus whatever that might be in the planning process.
In terms of range for those costs, those obviously can vary a lot, but I would say anywhere from 10 to 50,000 in my experience is what like those types of registry things would take. But then there may be some additional presentations and meetings and you know, whatever that is,
We just don't
it's
know
really
what it
hard
is.
to
Yeah,
tell.
We just don't know.
It seems to me that they do want to hear more about the need, and they typically don't want to demolish, like they don't want to stop districts from demolishing buildings because they understand the need that at some point you can't occupy that building anymore, but they do take it close to heart. They do want attention, and they do want, you know, a plan in place.
Would that meeting happen at the school, do you know?
At the
The
school,
meeting with the commission?
It often
Is it a-
does,
is
it
it-
often
Yeah,
does
okay,
happen
yeah.
On-site meeting?
on site, yeah.
it could be, it probably will be like a remote meeting at first to start the conversation, and then could go at the school or anywhere else.
So how soon can we schedule that meeting? So we know
I
what
can
it
do
is?
tomorrow, I can start that tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
And you can pay for that through the bond, or is that additional money outside of the bond?
It can be part of soft costs.
It's part of the,
Yeah, that's what I was
part of the
curious
bond.
about.
Yeah, reimbursement.
As long as it's not over 20%.
Not the 20%.
We have
No,
bigger
in total,
Oh,
all
total.
in,
So we're
all
doing-
in.
Well, that would be a very expensive report.
Yes.
Well, that goes with all the
I
other
get
stuff.
it, I get it.
So just to clarify, we can have the meeting, have everything in place,
Yeah.
but not execute on, let's say it was writing the history of the building. We could wait on that till after it approves, so.
Oh, yes,
So
Correct.
yes, you don't
so
need
we're
to
only
do-
spending
yes.
that money.
Correct.
Absolutely.
If it was-
You have until substantial completion.
to do-
So any, you have to have proof that, say you had to do like some photographs, anything before the building is demolished has to obviously happen before it's demolished, right? So like any record keeping, any videos
Yeah.
or any photographs to do that. And so the memorandum of understanding will have it described. And then you have until the new building is substantially complete to do the reporting, the work, and submit it and get it approved by them. It's a little bit of a back and forth because they have specifics on how they want things, so,
We wanna make sure we're limiting the amount of money we are spending.
Correct.
absolutely, yeah, you don't have to do any of that.
Right.
But we'll have the conversations. It
Yes,
won't
just
cost
the
us-
conversation.
We just won't get to the part where it costs us anything until after we know.
Exactly.
The same goes with the Commission for Disability. So the plan gets submitted to them as part of stage 2. There are some back and forth, communication, conversations. It doesn't mean that revisions have to take place right away and extra work has to happen. I mean, obviously, we're assuming that the building is compliant, although they do have questions.
It would be totally complete.
But
And the site.
all of that needs to happen, but not necessarily executed.
The difference between the Disability Commission and the Historic Commission is that the Historic Commission may come back later on and say you cannot turn this down.
So there'll be an understanding, so a memorandum of understanding is basically a contract between the town and them, saying that assuming these things are met, they will not turn this down.
What I mean is that they may come back and say you cannot demolish this portion of the building or some of the building.
That was my concern, that's why I raised. the concern.
Disability
Yeah.
is something that you can
can fix.
adjust and comply with. Historic Commission comes and says you cannot touch this, you can't touch that.
When you're dealing with them, if you could give us a heads up, because I interacted with them and I didn't remember, I don't recall this being an obstacle. And so, and I'm sure it is, but I don't know if it's because it was a contributing factor, but its acknowledgement of its historic significance did not seem to be a factor. And I have some relationships there, and I was just surprised that that was the information I was getting.
I was surprised because I do remember you saying that,
Yeah.
and I only emailed Elizabeth just to kind of get an inquiry, and I was a little bit surprised in terms of her response, but I also think that, you know, there are different, she just responded to, she may not even remember the history of this, so I think a meeting with yourself and other involved and important people is only will benefit,
Good.
because conversations happen,
Yeah.
and,
Maybe we
And I could have got that information, you never know, but I just, you know, we'll see.
Ralph, just to clarify, with Week 4L, when this company, NCA, bought the building, they had a couple of meetings with the Historic Commission, and they walked both actually, the school and the theater across the
Yep.
street. So, my recollection is that with these two buildings, they didn't have so much of an impact on what could or could not be demolished.
And it's funny you brought that up, because when I talked to them about Wickford Middle, they said it was similar to Wickford L.
Because, well, what happened is that
So,
it may not
as far as the
necessarily,
contributing factor.
not necessarily is a historic building, but
Exactly.
it could be a historic district, what they call
That's
a
exactly
historic
right, that's
district.
exactly what we're told.
And unfortunately, Wickford Village has a lot of what
Yep.
you could call historic districts.
Yep, but
they
if you're
could-
contributing, I think it's a much lesser threshold,
Correct.
yes.
But they could, at some point, say you cannot demolish this portion of the building, you cannot, whatever, I mean, anything can happen.
Okay,
so, in Garden City case, for example, in Cranston, it is a historic district, but not a historic building. And we agreed to document the entire district, and put it in the not registry like it's a historic registered building, but we made a documentation of the district. In case of, say, Gladstone, it's not a historic district, but it is a historic building, so we actually documented the building. So I think it just depends.
No, I understand that, but that's why there is a difference between something that you can discuss and say, oh, we did all this, and the decision that they can come back with.
Yeah.
I think that it's very important to determine that and kind of an early stage, and you don't wanna I don't think that you're gonna find yourself with an issue, but
Yeah.
I don't know the age of that school, and I don't know how much the historic district of the Wickford Village can be impacted.
Well, that's, I think, an important meeting, because again, you wanna make sure that you have that information, because you don't wanna go in to start paying for geotech
right.
things and different things if that's gonna be a barrier or a challenge. So I think having those conversations as soon as possible is great.
It's one of the top things on the list.
So regarding the geotech, when Perry did
Test pits.
Yep.
yeah, the
The
test
borings.
pits, yeah.
the test pit. I mean, we were talking about just contamination, we were talking about stratus of the ground. I can't remember exactly what the conclusion was. Can we use that at least as a parameter instead of going with the full geotechnical?
So that was more to test, they tested for any contaminants that would be consistent with like a landfill. Like that was some of what we were hearing, is that it was a junkyard, it was a landfill, so part of the test pits were to find what was the fill in there, what was the, they basically dug till they got to the native soil and dug down a little bit past the native soil. So there were soil samples.
I think what you're asking is, can any of that work be reused for this
No, what I'm saying is that the geotechnical test at this point may not even be, although you would like to have it, may not even be necessary to go to that extent, because it will affect, what can affect? Foundation.
Yeah.
How much is gonna affect the foundation? Whatever it is, it is. If you put a footing or a pylon, it's the same thing. You're gonna have to do it no matter what. That's why I'm saying that maybe that money, instead of being spent on the geotechnical, you should probably get it into the historic commission and define
I don't think we have a
clearly.
choice though because of RIDE.
The structural engineer will ask for
Geotech.
geotech in order to size, even preliminary, the footings and foundation
And we
system.
think we wanna have that
Yeah.
information before we go any further to
Right.
know the impacts that we may have with the land and the building.
Exactly. What we'll ask for is the minimum number of borings that we possibly can get away with. That's what we're going to ask for. But he's gonna ask for that for, it's not just bearing, it's other
Got it.
conditions, you know, groundwater and other stuff as well.
No, I understand.
Yeah. It's money you have to spend in order to get information to find out what the impact is.
So besides those four components, you wanna probably add also the historic commission.
After, not right now, but, you know, the full report or whatever has to be done will be an expense after referendum, not now.
Okay.
We'll get some preliminary answers from the historic people to see what kind of risk we have, and then we'll bring that back to the committee, and then we'll decide on an action after that.
Dave, did you have any questions about the impact of with your building there, Wallace, or any other comments?
No, I think that, I'm certain that the site plan and the access egress, keeping the building and those pathways safe, I'm sure that'll all happen. I just wanted to build on, I'm not sure what your name is, gentleman was just saying though. Kenny, you said earlier that, in terms of information for the public that is really gonna be necessary to hopefully convince people that this is a good project. Certainly centers around that geotech and having that stuff done in the summertime or prior to September. But I think just as valuable information as well would be the historic question. So I think those two pieces, just in terms of the public relations piece of this would probably both be very important.
Right, and I did mention to Inga about, getting these meetings scheduled as soon as possible, so we can get that information, so we can share everything out with the community.
Yes.
So Elizabeth's email says this building is listed in the national and state registers of historic places.
Interesting,
I can't wait to see the paperwork.
interesting.
Let's see it. No, there's documentation there. I'd
sure.
love to see stuff. Yeah, let's see
I
it.
sent
There
to
is.
you.
I would love, I think we should request to see it, cause that would be interesting
Remember the
information.
year that was registered?
No, I can look it up.
What's your
Good.
title?
Her?
That's what it is.
I
I just wonder what we're dealing with. If you don't have it, don't worry
So
about it.
she's not the director. There's another person above her. I
Okay.
forget his name,
Okay.
but she's a direct report to him.
Good.
So there's like 2 or 3 people there.
It could be the person that used to work with Michael Barbados.
So I know,
Yeah,
her
I
name
can't
is,
remember myself the
Martha.
name.
Her name is Martha. Can't think of her last name. She worked there, she's with Michael now.
Can't
Because
remember.
Rhode Island's small, so my mother worked there years ago with Martha. That's why I know Martha. My mother worked with Rhode Island Historical Preservation Commission, so.
No one is surprised by this.
Exactly, typical Rhode Island, so that's why I know Martha, I knew Ted, so, but that's all changed over the years, so, regretfully.
Oh, goodness.
Small world. Yeah.
Instead of landmark building, we use landmark people.
Typical Rhode Island, that's right. Typical Rhode Island.
So we do need approval from this committee to move this to school committee for the proposal here. Do we have a motion to?
Before we make a motion, I have a question for you. So, should the motion include Mike's recommendation, the discussion here about funding for the geotechnical and the property survey as well? Or should we just, what are your expectations?
So what we need is approval of what this proposal is, not what, because those are alternates, right? So
Right, but Mike had mentioned that there
proposing-
shouldn't be alternates, that we should think about
We
including
should
that.
think about including
Should,
it.
would that be included as a motion, or are we just making a motion for the proposal?
I would make the motion for the proposal and then take that to school committee
Okay.
as far as,
But should the school committee know of our thoughts? Because I think it makes a lot of
I think
sense.
I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'll be
I would
there.
say we'll be bringing that to that meeting.
And I only say that because, from experience, yeah, you seem to focus on the geotechnical, which I give you a lot of, thank you. I'm focusing on the survey, property survey. And I say
I was
that,
focusing on the topic.
and Dante knows why I'm asking.
I was-
Because we've had a couple of surprises on some construction projects we're doing where you can't believe the
I was
boundary
looking at the
lines.
top two, is that,
That's one of them,
Yeah,
yes.
so-
yeah, I want the top two.
Yeah, so,
Those are the ones I-
so I think that's worth the money, trust me.
I mean, I think from the school committee perspective, you know, as it's presented, it's part of, in theory, the proposal, like it's not exactly, I think it's gonna be part of the conversation, just where we are timeline wise, and so if the advisory committee has advice to the school committee on those items that they want official, like obviously some of us are here, Ken will obviously be there, Mike will be there, but if the committee as a official body wants to make an official recommendation for those considerations, I would put that in somehow, you know, it could be separate or it could be something, but I do think having official advice from the committee is helpful. And so if those pieces are part of that, either do it separate or do it combined, in my recommendation.
So that if this is appropriate, I would make a motion that we approve this proposal to forward to the school, we forward to the school committee for recommendation of approval, with the additional stipulation that this committee feels funding of the geotechnical and the property survey prior to RIDE requiring it may be something that they want to consider.
I would second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Just note, Ken, Mr. Quesada-Lee, just for attendance on that.
The next item on the agenda is discussing of the timeline, which apparently we did earlier. There's really not much more to add besides what we already discussed about, maybe, you know, we have a lot of meetings we have to get scheduled, the submission from Perkins Eastman has to go to building committee, to school committee, to town council. We just have to make sure all of our meetings are aligned prior to the September 15th deadline. From here in, you're going to put together what that timeline within the summer is going to look like, and Inger regarding all of the submissions, and the meetings that we'll have to have with RIDE from now through
Yep.
as well.
We will need your input in terms of the level of the drafts and the versions that you would want to see to get this approved.
And then, next item on here is, the next meeting date. My suggestion would be for us to put together a schedule of meetings from now through the summer. And that way we have that on the calendar for all of us.
Right.
Even if they're just
I think
tentative
we're gonna
meetings, so
meet
we
on-
have them, if we have to cancel one, we can, but knowing that we have that held on the calendar. for
So
us.
knowing that we have, still the DMS and capital improvement, and our next school committee is June 4th.
I'm not sure how, just from my previous meeting looking, I'm not sure where we would fit a meeting
I know.
of this committee by June 4th.
But my problem would be, if we need approvals, that means we're not getting approval till June 18th. And that's, so like, if we couldn't start on DMS or capital projects until June 18th.
We need to get that submission from tomorrow, we need a deadline from Rouse, and then we can discuss how we can get a meeting.
I sent, there's something in your email. You don't have to look at it now. No, we can't talk about it now, but. So if we're looking at dates.
So I can put together, once, if you can tell me the dates, I had like a running spreadsheet last year, we can do the same thing where all the meetings are identified. And then, of course, if something has to be rescheduled.
And the purpose of my purpose for the meeting before June 4th would be for very similar to what we did tonight, as far as getting the architects' proposals so that they can start.
Mike, when's that next meeting? I guess what I'm asking
June
is,
4th, so we have a meeting on.
When are we gonna start services? Cause I really have to get everybody lined up.
So there's a meeting on the 21st, so the proposal we discussed tonight is
Yeah.
going in front of the school committee the 21st.
Okay, so,
Next Tuesday.
so next Tuesday, we're gonna start right after that meeting.
If approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start
Correct.
gearing up
That would be-
people.
Yes.
Yeah. And we've got to give people a heads up.
That's
so they
work's
can-
coming.
So they can start up. Same thing with the geotech and
Mhm.
the other stuff. I wanna make sure that the crews are available.
And I think you're gonna have, when you say, you're talking about public meetings, I think you're gonna need a lot of people doing, you know, writing letters and attending things and getting the word out and letting people know, here's the plans, this is good plans, you know, follow with it.
Yep.
You know, so I think you're gonna have to have a whole, you know, series of, like you said, things lined up and,
And my suggestion, I agree with you, and my suggestion to the committee, school committee, council, superintendent, whatever, how I can help is that we try to focus those in a tight time frame between Labor Day and Election Day.
Yep.
I can tell you that from experience, money spent before Labor Day is not money well spent. People aren't paying attention, it's way just, they're not working, so just crunch it in and hit the ground running for a good 45 to 60 days.
So are we're
Thinking
on the
of-
next meeting date first, still,
Yeah,
right?
that's it. So in thinking of setting up another meeting, what is the earliest that most people here can meet during the day? Because I need to look at entire
You're
looking
talking
at all
about working
opportunities.
hours or after working hours?
I'm talking about during the day, what's the earliest that people can get here, either after work or, because we can't do virtual. And the school year right now, this is the most busiest time with events and
Yeah.
meetings and whatnot, and ability is very limited, but what's the earliest that we need,
4:30.
we need a quorum, so.
At 4:30 is mine.
So at 4:30,
Yeah, it's fine with me, I am a mile away from here.
okay, but could you, would, I'm just looking at the earliest.
4, 5,
Okay,
not 6:30.
yeah,
It's 4:30.
okay,
No, I can be here for
Okay.
4:30, if that's okay.
My schedule's pretty open now.
okay, thank you,
you know, anytime I'm retired, I can.
okay. So I'm gonna put it together and let's see what we get prior to the June 4th, and, we'll just need a quorum.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it doesn't have to, for the, I mean, as many people as possible is helpful, but if the committee has things in advance, they could always send the two of you information, or, at least if you have a quorum, you can at least move things forward, which is important, for progress, so.
And that was exactly what I was gonna ask, if we had the proposals ahead of time and sent them out, and if somebody wasn't able, I would think that they'd be able to share their comments or feedback.
Yeah. All right. For now. Thank you. All right. Any other final comments? Okay, motion for adjournment?
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.